Hello, everyone, and welcome back to one of these interview episodes of the SWW show. I'm Mike, and today I have a guest with me to talk about, honestly, a very interesting looking game. To get us started, do you mind introducing yourself and the game we're here to talk about?
So my name is Baron. I'm the founder of Gaia Publications, and I'm here to talk about my game Bumble Brawlers.
Perfect. So, people who have never heard of it, what is Bumble Brawlers?
Yeah, so Bumble Brawlers is a top-down twin stick shooter. So you get to kind of drop in as a character, and over time you'll be able to earn cash to kind of pre-customize the character as you enter the game. But it's a little bit of a roguelike experience. So you drop in, and each round lasts anywhere from about 30 seconds to 1 minute, and your goal is to just survive for as long for the entirety of the round, and then collect as many pickups as possible. These pickups give you uh, anything from health, cash to experience, and then after each round ends, if you level up, you have the ability to upgrade your character by selecting a new ability, or you can also go into the store and purchase upgrades like new weapons, armor, and then a couple of items that can kind of give you some buffs that help you survive for as long as possible.
So, immediately I'm curious, game, like, out the gate sounds like it's very interesting. Like, it sounds like, obviously, like roguelikes, influence, a few of the things that influence it. Where kind of did you kind of draw this inspiration from? Like where in your head did this concept come from?
So I think out of everything that I've played so far, The Binding of Isaac was probably where I got my inspiration from. The game is like kind of honestly nothing like The Binding of Isaac, but um, that was probably one of the earlier games that I got into when I started switching from like console gaming to PC gaming. And some of my projects that I'm working on right now are kind of complicated. Um, so I wanted to kind of go back and make something maybe a little bit more simpler. And so I was looking back at some of the games that I had started playing, some of the indie games that I started with, and The Binding of Isaac was the one that stuck out to me the most.
No, that's interesting. So obviously, looking at it, it's fair to say this game looks decently different than the Binding of Isaac, as you'd probably say. So kind of, I understand kind of where like the systematic influence kind of comes from there. What else did you pull from? Obviously, kind of like what? Because when I'm looking at this, I guess my first instinct kind of it gave me like this combination of like Fall Guys meets like a few other like those local co-op games, and I'm kind of curious, kind of maybe if there's anything you kind of drew from visually and stuff too.
I think, well, visually, actually, it's just kind of a matter of circumstance. Just Yeah, I think the visual inspiration just kinda came like, I wanted something low poly, because, like, yeah, again, like, a lot of the projects that I work on are really, like, high fidelity graphics. They have, like, really high fidelity graphics, and so, I wanted to do something low poly because I didn't want to worry about performance issues, but, like, I think specifically you mentioned Fall Guys. I think I've played Fall Guys once, and that was at work one time. My boss was just kinda showing me what it was because he wanted to draw some inspiration from that, from, a game that we were working on for, like, my job, my 9 to 5, and so, I mean, maybe subconsciously, I did kinda pull some inspiration from Fall Guys, but as far as the style goes, it was just kinda I had some old art from back when I first started game development, and I was like, "Hey, I have these assets. I've never had any plans to use these ever again." So, I came up with the idea for Bumble Brawlers, and my first thought was I could use, the the really, like, 4K, um textured assets for that I use for a lot of the other projects that I work on, or I could try to go a different route. Especially some of the games I've been working on lately, I've been kind of taking that more stylized, low poly approach, and I've realized that's a lot easier to work with because you get a lot of freedom to as far as like performance goes because you're not spending as much time like rendering all these crazy high fidelity graphics, so going with something that was more of a low poly approach seemed to be a lot more effective as far as just delivering an optimized game, so I didn't have to spend a bunch of time trying to like cut out lighting or cut down textures and all this stuff. Um, so yeah, I think that was just a kind of a coincidence more than anything.
No, no, and that makes sense. I'm actually kind of curious. So, specifically with like the low poly discussion there, obviously that is something I think people probably don't think about as enough. Even though we talk about how like super obviously high fidelity stuff, for example, is something that like, is one of the reasons that's like choking time in game dev kind of recently. From your point of view, kind of as someone who's worked with really high fidelity stuff, and then obviously on your game, doing these kind of lower fidelity models, does that change kind of how iteration works for you? Because it's almost like, as you said, it takes lower processing to run these things. So like in my head, you can now like iterate like mechanics or these other things way easier, probably using the actual models or stuff closer to the end game product than like you would in like a high fidelity environment for obvious kind of logistical hurdles. I was curious, kind of, was that true for you? If there's any other kind of affordances or maybe problems that arise from kind of dealing with these low fidelity models versus like something higher end.
I think most definitely, yeah. I mean, this doesn't necessarily apply as much to Bumble Brawlers because Bumble Brawlers, in its spirit, is kind of simple. But just from when I've like worked across all these different projects, typically the lower fidelity ones have a lot more freedom as far as just what you are allowed to do. Like you can typically add a lot more. Because again, like you really aren't getting a whole lot of overhead from your like art, right? Where, for instance, like if you try to like make a dense forest in like Unreal Engine, which is what Bumble Brawlers is made in Unreal Engine. Um, Trying to make a dense forest, you could potentially get like a 20, 30 FPS impact just from that forest instead of having that 20, 30 FPS available. Just for the sake of like having a fluid, functional game. Because I mean, Bumble Brawlers you can pretty much run at like 240 FPS, no problem on pretty much any machine I've tried it. Um, but it's very hard to get that level of performance on any game that's using 4K textures, right? That's something that you always have to kind of consider is that, okay, like I want to at least have a baseline FPS of 60 FPS for pretty much anybody who is going to enter the game to where they can play with at least decent graphic settings, right? To where they don't have to cut their graphic settings all the way down to low. And so, for an example, one of our testers has a 1070, and that's kind of like the baseline target hardware that we try to hit to get a baseline 60 FPS, right? And so essentially, if he can't run the game at 60 FPS, then the game isn't optimized enough. It's not ready to kind of move into that production phase. And just, yeah, it makes iterating so much faster when you don't have to worry about that overhead from the graphics, because that's something that's like completely like held projects off to where there's, especially I think with my experience, I'm solely a programmer. I don't really have a whole lot of experience with the art side of things, aside from just what I've had, like when I've been able to do to make the games that I've been able to make. So there's like projects that I've had that are completely on hold because I just don't know how to optimize them, and I need to bring somebody in who has more experience to be able to optimize things. So yeah, it's definitely the iteration process is faster, and it just gives you a lot more freedom as far as what you're capable of doing for the game as a whole. It allows you to have so much more freedom.
That totally makes a lot of sense. So I want to kind of jump back kind of what we talked at the beginning. So you said you call these, if I got this down right, like 45-second to like what, 90-second-ish rounds is kind of the point here.
Yeah, yeah. So I think it kind of depends. Like the time typically increments after each round. So I think the first round starts at 45 seconds and then it goes up to about, I believe, maybe 90 seconds, but that is like the last level. Last level, the final boss, that round is probably lasts about 90 seconds. For the most part, the rounds kind of taper off at about 60 seconds.
So kind of digging that kind of where did you? Because I'm assuming you've probably played with like different time rounds or whatever. Kind of where did that becoming the sweet spot kind of come from? Was it kind of like you found a way to give players kind of pocket of action was your goal, kind of, or what kind of were you kind of going for in these like little almost micro-sized rounds?
It's actually kind of funny. So initially the rounds were based off of how many enemies spawned. So right, it's like round one would spawn like 15 enemies, two, 20 enemies, et cetera, et cetera. But we kept running into a bug during the QA process where sometimes the round counter, like the enemy counter wasn't reliable because there was some times where you could like get kind of caught in between these frames where like an enemy was dying and like the round was trying to end, but it would miss that. Like there was just like a weird bug where it, like kind of missed that event. That event would get dropped for whatever reason. So the enemy would die, and then the player would be running around, and they're like, "All right, there are no more enemies left." And so I thought about it. I spent like a day on it, and I probably pushed out about 4 or 5 different builds trying to fix it, and it just kinda kept popping back up at the most random times. It was really hard to kinda nail down, like, specifically what was causing the issue. So I just decided, "All right, we'll just put a timer on the rounds." And then the specific times kinda came from just QA testing, like, how it felt, because typically I want that at least that first map that you play to be a really, really kinda, like, almost easy experience, right? I want you to be able to feel, like, strong when you enter that first map, and, 45 seconds just turned out to be that perfect balance where it was, like, kind of difficult, so it wasn't too easy, but it was long enough to where you kinda felt like you had won, right? It wasn't like you felt like you had to fight hard to win, you know? And so that was just kinda how it balanced out at the end of the day.
No, that's interesting. So one of the things you made a comment about too, right? So obviously these short rounds, you kind of do upgrades kind of between rounds to kind of keep moving forward. I wanted to kind of jump in kind of. So what is the player kind of upgrading and kind of what kind of are like some of your favorite like weapons or things kind of you can use kind of in these battles?
Yeah, so I mean, I think first off, to answer the favorite weapon, it's probably the plasma gun or the minigun. Just because you can like those are. I mean, it's kind of a cheesy answer. Or actually, my favorite gun is the silenced Beretta by far because it actually might be the best weapon in the game. It's kind of broken right now. I might have to go and update it, but I'm just kind of like leaving it as it is to let people experiment with it. But it's pretty much a one shot kill. It just has a really slow fire rate. Um, but then kind of going back to the rest of the question. So um, you have, I think, about 10 stats. And first and foremost, like you can upgrade your weapon. So you basically, the way the store works, you get 4 items and then you can re-roll in the store. So if you don't like the 4 items you can pay like, I think it starts at like 27 bucks. You pay 27 bucks, it re-rolls the store, and then it kind of increases the price, and then that refreshes the list of items. And you can upgrade your weapon, you can upgrade armor, which will kind of buff like a lot of. It'll like give you some buffs and debuffs. So upgrading the weapon, that's pretty straightforward. Some weapons are just better than others. The armor kind of depends on like how your play style is, because some armor will give you like really high health, but it'll really reduce your speed and stuff like that. And then there are just general items too that some items are really interesting. So there's like an item that every time you kill somebody, they're like a bullet explodes out of them and hits somebody else, right? And then sometimes there are items that are just general stat buffs that'll give you like life steal or a dodge chance or something like that. Um, and then there are like raw abilities that you get every time you level up. So one of them is like you get a bunch of orbs, like a bunch of fire orbs that orbit around you, or one of them will just like drop a lightning bolt on top of a random enemy, and then you can upgrade those abilities each time you level up. Kind of using that same process, you get 3 abilities each time you level up, and then you can reroll. And so sometimes you might have an ability that you want to upgrade and it doesn't show up in that first initial list. So you just keep re-rolling until you find that ability. Then when you upgrade it, it'll give you, it'll upgrade that ability so it has like a special um, effect. So for instance, like the Molotov, uh, by default, it just throws one. every like 30 seconds, I think. You just throw one Molotov, it explodes, and then people walk into it and they burn. Um, but then you can upgrade it and it'll throw two, and then you can upgrade it again, three, four, five, and then eventually you get like this crazy arc where you just throw a bunch of fire bombs in front of you. So I mean that's kind of the general flow is um, you get to kind of pick and choose the way that your game is going to play out each time you play.
Oh, that's so. Well, how did you kind of find? So obviously, games like this, I think one of the fun trails is that you keep upgrading and kind of getting these insane runs or whatever kind of things you unlock. How did you find almost that balance of both giving players the choice or the options of stuff to do or unlock or kind of feel progression, but also like make it feel manageable, right? Like I've played games like this where there's so many things and you're just like, I'm choosing a thing, so there's it's too intense to look at everything. I'm kind of curious how
Yeah.
you kind of watch that balancing act.
So that's actually my biggest concern right now is that there might be just too much and it might just be a little too overwhelming. So far, I haven't received any sort of feedback like that, but that's something that I kind of think about every day is that, and I mean, so also my friend Mike who's been doing QA testing for me has been extremely helpful on that front, just like being like, hey, when you for the first time you enter the store, it'd be really cool if there's like a couple pop-ups that just kind of explained what's happening here. So that's like one of the things. And then there's also um, which I'm probably going to do another pass on this and upgrade it or update it a little bit more. But when you select or when you go into the store, the items will tell you basically if they're better or worse than the last item that you purchased. So basically, right now it's just a plus or minus sign on top of the item in general. But I want to go through each stat and say plus or minus, like kind of let you know, like, hey, this item is something that is going to make your character worse in this area, but it'll make your character better in this area. So then you just kind of have like a general idea of, okay, maybe I'm like too slow. I realize after playing 2 or 3 rounds, I'm too slow. So I want to make myself faster, but I'll have to sacrifice some armor and I'm okay with that. So there's some things like that where messaging the player is probably the most crucial part. Of any game that I've ever worked on. Typically, when it comes down to like something that has any sort of level of complexity, just making sure that you message the players constantly as you can without breaking immersion is the key to that, I think.
No, that makes absolutely a ton of sense. So as we're talking, obviously the game's been Bumble Brawlers. You're actually currently available like on Steam, like right now.
Right, right.
And I'm curious, kind of. So obviously, you could do as I've learned, as you'd probably contest to, you could do as much internal or even controlled testing as you want. Once it's in the hands of everyone, the amount of feedback is just different, and like the type of
Exactly. Yeah.
feedback. I'm curious, kind of from launch, was the feedback you started receiving what you expected, or is there kind of any unexpected things that kind of came out of this launch?
So actually, it has been better than I thought it would be. Because I mean, I don't know. There's always that. Anytime you put something out there, there's always that fear that people aren't gonna like it. So I think I did, to some degree, expect the worst. But everybody that's played the game so far, um, at least the people that have gone out of the way to give me feedback, they've been extremely positive. So I think we reached out to about 7 curators. All of them came back with everybody that's played the game, that we did some giveaways and all that kind of stuff. Everybody's been like, hey, I love it. There's a giveaway that just finished, I think, like 2 days ago. As soon as I think it was as soon as Steam Next Fest started, the giveaway finished. And um I remember by about 6 o'clock I got a message on our X account where somebody had mentioned me and they took a screenshot and they're about 5 levels in already. um, so they got the game at like probably like noon and spent just like 6 hours grinding it apparently, and it's like super deep into the game. So I think those are the things that are awesome. Like sales haven't been great, but I think that's just on me. I've definitely botched the marketing. So that's something that I just have to learn to get better at as I go on with making some of the other projects that I'm going to be releasing soon. But everybody that's played the game has loved it, and that to me means more than sales. 100%, right? Because at the end of the day, I do make games just to like make something that people can enjoy, and so far it seems like everybody has enjoyed it.
Which correct me if I'm wrong, you're listed on like a bunch of storefronts. But the one that actually I'm the most curious about, just because I've never kind of gone this process. What's it like getting it on the like I could see you listed on like the Amazon storefront.
Right, right.
What does that mean, and kind of like what Amazon products? I'm actually kind of curious. Can you kind of deploy to?
Yeah, so pretty much any of the Kindle apps, and then all the Fire TV apps. The problem right now that I'm having, Fire TVs are still using 32-bit hardware, from what I understand. Or I think I reached out to the support team, and like a lot of them are actually upgraded to 64-bit hardware. But for some reason, when I am building the project with Unreal Engine, it's not giving me the support to deliver to Fire TVs because that's really what I was getting at. So you can play the game on an Apple TV as well. And I think that's actually my favorite way to play because you can just turn auto fire on and then hold the Apple TV remote and just kind of like
Just do
move
it.
your thumb around.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
usually
And you
that's when
just
you
kind of,
made like a one button game almost because it's just the joystick.
yeah, exactly. And then so, yeah, like typically you need that second joystick, but there's an auto fire setting in the game settings. So you just turn that on and yeah, you just run around and kick back like on the couch or something like that. And so I wanted the same experience for the Fire TV, but for whatever reason, I'm having some trouble with the build process to get that supported. So right now, I think it works on about like 4 or 5 Kindle devices. And as soon as I figure out that architecture issue, with the build process with the engine, there's like a checkbox somewhere that I need to set that's not set properly. Once that's fixed, then it should be on Fire TV and a bunch of other Kindle devices as well.
No, that sounds great. So obviously the game's been Bumble Brawlers. Um, what's next for you? Kind of, are you kind of working on some game stuff? Are you jumping to another project? Kind of, what has kind of this road led to? What's next?
Yeah. So I actually did just finish another project last week. I'm still kind of wondering because like right now it's like a kind of like a social deduction game. The problem right now is that it's not gonna succeed if there aren't people playing it. I've been trying to kinda make AI that'll play it, but it's just not as good as, like, a human experience, right? So, I'm probably gonna put that on hold, but it is completely finished, right? I could release it today if I wanted to. Um, so there's that project, just kinda gonna figure out how I want to proceed with that because I don't want to launch a product to have somebody pay for it and then just know that it's not going to work if there's not enough people playing it. So then there's another project that I'm working on that is probably going to be done. I want to say like probably midsummer. It's going to be kind of like a top-down roguelike RPG. Or not roguelike, but it's gonna be like a top-down RPG, sort of inspired by Diablo, but it'll just kind of be like something single player, a little bit faster paced, I guess. Um, and then I have actually probably about 6 games in the backlog that just from that thing that I was talking to you about earlier, just performance issues. So really want to take the time to like figure or like finish those projects, follow them through. Um, and then, yeah, I think from here, this is what I want to do, right? To be doing what we're doing right now, and just making games. So I think if anything, this Bumble Brawlers was a good first step just to learn, how difficult it really is to like market properly, and to learn all the different things that I need to do to market properly. So taking that learning experience and then bringing that forward to the next projects. And then, of course, any feedback that comes back for Bubble Brawlers, people want any new features, or if they find a bug or something like that, then I'll be there to fix it. But yeah, otherwise, it's just moving on to the projects that I was really planning on making.
That sounds absolutely great. Again, the game we talked about first today is Bumble Brawlers. Again, you are Gaia Publications Inc. So you can probably check out future the rest of the work kind of around the internet on there. Anything else that we should be either sending people to, or anything else in the game that you feel like we missed?
I mean, as far as the game, I think we got most of the stuff covered. If you guys want to follow us on X and check out our website, that's where you'll find the most updates. Also working on the Steam profile. Um, But yeah, every time, something new's coming up, especially with another project, it'll typically be on our X and then on our Steam profile page as well. So yeah, if you want to see what I'm working on next, that's the place to go.
Perfect. Well, again, thank you for taking time to talk to me today, and best of luck as you both continue updating this and continue down the road working on the rest of your projects.
Thank you. And honestly, it's an honor that you reached out to me, and can't wait to see like everything else that you're working on. And thank you. Yeah, thank you for taking the time with me.